Good evening, Los Angeles. This is a year we are always going to remember. 2020 has been filled with suffering and pain. It's been a time of loss and of hardship. It is one of the toughest, if not the toughest years of our life. But even in the midst of suffering, we see the rays of light, of kindness, of solidarity, of resilience, and yes, even of victory. This is a big day and a big month for Los Angeles. As Dodgers manager Dave Roberts put it last night when he announced to our city, this is our year. And last night, our boys in blue brought a new generation a new set of memories, wrote their chapter in the fabled book of this city and our sports franchises and of the Dodgers. This is something that each one of us will remember. I sat with my daughter and my wife last night. We watched the Dodgers end a 32-year drought. I felt like a kid all over again in this town. We couldn't help but feel that pride in this team and what they have overcome and what they have sacrificed as a metaphor for us for this year. A team that met adversity with their excellence, frustration with endurance, and showed us that hard work pays off. We are the most incredible city, with the best folks anywhere in the world, who are constantly reinventing themselves and doubling down on their hard work and making sure that there's a brighter day ahead of us always. The Lakers and the Dodgers now together have turned Tinseltown into Titletown. I couldn't be prouder as the mayor of Los Angeles, and I know that every Angelino feels that swell in a year that we needed good news of what we have accomplished last night. And to Dave Roberts and to the boys in blue, thank you. You have lifted up the spirit of the city in our most difficult moment, and you have reminded us what LA greatness looks like. All that's missing is our chance to celebrate together, and I promise when it is safe to do so, we will honor our champions in a way that only Los Angeles can do. Now that our teams have won their titles, it's on us to win ours, to continue our fight in our battle against COVID-19 and this economic downturn and the challenges we face from racial justice to climate change, to show our strength just as we saw on the field last night. From the very beginning of this crisis, I am proud that you have led. You've led in your actions, and collectively this city has been a leader in this nation, following science and data, the first in the nation to shut down places where people gather, the first to require masks, and to provide widespread testing to everybody. LA continues to have fewer infections, hospitalizations, and deaths compared to other cities in the US. LA County is the largest county in population in America, but we are number 179 in per capita infections, 154 in per capita deaths, in counties with more than 100,000 people. That's clear evidence of what you are doing, that the sacrifices you have made have saved lives. This week, we're continuing to support those Angelinos, though, that need it most. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce a new city program that will deliver relief to those that are still suffering the economic hardship of this moment. Beginning next Monday, low-income Angelinos can apply for the DWP Utility Grant, a one-time $500 check drawn from Federal CARES Act funding to help Angelinos in greatest need of paying their bills. Applications will stay open till November 15th, and the funds will go out by mail in late December. And I'm so grateful to the partnership that exists here at City Hall, to our City Council President, Nuri Martinez, to each member of the City Council, and our Department of Water and Power that will help with the distribution of these funds, to make sure that you know you have not been forgotten, that even as Washington struggles to pass its latest round of CARES Act, something that I've called for from this podium almost every time I've addressed you, a nonpartisan call for help. We won't forget you, and we will stretch for every last penny we can help working families to get through this tough moment. This week was also very exciting because we launched last week actually, but announced it this week, a rapid testing pilot program, one of the very first in the country, The news that I shared with you a few weeks back and that we already have in the field, a critical step forward in our effort to track, trace, and stop this virus. Alongside Catherine Barger, the chair of our County Board of Supervisors, and the County Department of Public Health, and researchers at USC and our partners at Cedars-Sinai, our new initiative, together with the Rockefeller Foundation and partners across the country, including the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, is examining the use of rapid antigen tests among firefighters and school-aged children. These tests deliver quick results. In fact, I took one of these tests, and they said it took 15 minutes. I had my results back in 2 minutes. And instead of costing $100 or $150, these tests can be as cheap as $5. A successful pilot opens the door to a range of possibilities, helping us get on top of transmissions earlier and pushing down that curve, making life safer for everyone from students to first responders, and providing a critical resource to reopen our economy. And the best thing is this pilot taps into who we are in Los Angeles, a city of dreamers and doers, with the academic institutions, the medical professionals, the innovators, and yes, the public policy folks who dare to take the first step to be the architects of success in our fight against COVID-19. But even as we deploy new tools to fight the pandemic, we face a stark reality. COVID-19 is still here to stay in Los Angeles and across our nation. We've had great success in keeping the virus at bay in recent months, but the most recent numbers tell us that infections are now on the rise across the country. While it's much higher in other parts of the U.S., we're seeing the beginning of a rise here too. Today, our county announced 1,351 new infections, bringing our total number of diagnosed infections to 303,369 LA County residents. And 647 of today's cases were here in the city of Los Angeles, bringing our total to 124,102 cases since this crisis began. The county now estimates that 1 out of 1,000 of us is infected with COVID-19. But the rate of transmission, something I share with you each briefing, is at an estimated 0.95, under that 1 again. Last time we spoke, it was above that 1. Although they do expect the possibility that next week it will go above that 1, so we have to keep doing what we're doing. Our hospital inventory remains stable. That's good news. Right now, there's 962 available beds across our general emergency hospitals, including 825 in acute care and 137 in the ICUs. And we have 229 ICU patients who are severely sick, a substantial decrease since last month. But I never gloss over that number because that means 229 families are on pins and needles, hoping their loved ones get better, and our prayers are with you. The county also reported, most tragically, 20 new deaths. It reminds us that every single day there is a human toll to this crisis. And we've now surpassed 7,000 deaths to 7,040 in the county since this pandemic began. This is now the second, COVID-19 is now the second leading cause of death in Los Angeles County. And of those 23 were in the city of Los Angeles, and we mourn with everyone who has lost a loved one. We know your pain, we feel your pain, and we are with you. This virus has been with us for a long time. And as of today, all 6 of the state's critical indicators that we track in LA County, remember just a few weeks they're all headed in the right direction, they're ticking up in the wrong direction again. We're all feeling the exhaustion and the fatigue, I know. You're thinking, maybe I still haven't gotten sick, it's been months, I can hang out with more than 3 households. Maybe I can take off that mask. Maybe we can hang out inside instead of outdoors. Don't do it. We can't move back to normal without losing more lives. This is the worst possible time to let down our guard. And if we do, more people will get sick, and if more people get sick, more people will be hospitalized, and if more people are hospitalized, more people who we love will die. And if more people are dying, more businesses will be closed. It's that simple. Public health experts now tell us that gatherings are powering a terrifying new COVID-19 surge nationally. Nationally, we set new daily records. This Sunday, 88,000 cases in a single day, the highest we've ever seen. And 500,000 Americans received the diagnosis this week alone that they are positive. France on Friday announced a 4-week lockdown will begin. And Germany on Monday starts also a 4-week lockdown as well, with all non-essential businesses being shut down. In short, the fall surge is upon us and winter is coming. We have to do our part. This virus is often spread through asymptomatic people who are attending an event and assuming that they're fine. So unfortunately, when it comes to Halloween, we can't celebrate the way we always have. And as a parent of an 8-year-old, I know how sad that is for our young ones. But the county has been clear. We should not trick or treat. And as a reminder, LA County limits all gatherings, whether it's for Halloween or any time, to no more than 3 households getting together outdoors for 2 hours or less, and everybody needs to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart. We have to stay focused on one clear objective, one that I know we can do, keeping infections low enough to make sure our hospitals have the beds, the ICU beds, the equipment, and the staff to serve patients with severe cases of COVID-19 and other medical emergencies as well. That responsibility falls on all of us and rests on our commitment to using our key tools: wearing your mask, keeping your distance, washing your hands, getting your flu shot if you haven't already. And if you think there's even a slight chance that you have been exposed, please get tested. We can get you tested at a city or county site. You can go to your medical provider. You can go to a local pharmacy or a state site. And the CDC has underscored that a lot of the spread that's happening is asymptomatic people. For those who went to the streets to celebrate the Dodgers or the Lakers and were around strangers in an unsafe environment, please get tested and stay isolated for 14 days per the county's Department of Public Health advice. At city sites this week, we have plenty of capacity for you. We can test over 21,000 people this week alone. And about 75% of the city's tests have been for unique patients, which means that a third of the city's residents have now been tested at one point or another. We're still making a few adjustments this week to our testing sites because this will be an election week, already is with early voting. So testing will be temporarily unavailable at our beloved Dodger Stadium from this Friday through Tuesday, Election Day, while it's serving as a voting center. And we thank the Dodgers for opening up that space to make sure that people can vote if they need to. Nearby testing sites will surge up their capacity so everybody can still get a test, whether it's in Lincoln Park or Echo Park and Union Station. Those are available for folks in that part of town, and we'll expand our capacity at the other city testing sites that will stay open throughout those dates. Starting October 30th and continuing after Election Day, we will extend all sites by 2 hours, keeping them open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Dodger Stadium from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. starting on November 9th. And once those changes take effect, we'll be able to test over 30,000 people. You see, this time we're not waiting for the surge, we're preparing for it to make sure you get your test back timely so that nobody has to wait days to get a test. And while we've had an exceptional record throughout this year, those 2 or 3 pinch points we're trying to avoid as we go into the fall and we see cases tick up. And one more important thing, remember that all testing sites give priority testing for those who are working at the polls from now until Election Day. So we want to honor you if you're stepping forward to help protect our right to vote in such a critical election. So please, poll workers, we don't want you to wait in line to schedule an appointment. And we also continue to send mobile teams to you so we don't have to wait for you to come to us. Today, they were at the Los Angeles Downtown Medical Center Health Fair, the Garment Workers Center, and at the intersection of Sherman Way and Sepulveda Boulevard. Tomorrow, we'll have those proactive ones. You don't need an appointment, just show up at Lankershim and Chandler Boulevard, at East Cesar Chavez and Soto Street, and at the Wilmington YMCA. And we have plenty of appointments available. So please, go to one of the more than 100 testing sites and find out where they are and sign up at coronavirus.lacity.org/testing. And if you get a call, just as a reminder, from a contact tracing team of the county, please, you need to answer that. You need to stick with the interview and complete the interview so that we can know everybody you've come into contact with, call them, and make sure that they're safe. This literally is the difference between whether spread happens quickly or whether we slow it down. This is critical for your family, it's critical for your neighborhood, it's critical for your workplace. And our approach to COVID-19 has always been guided by 2 principles: saving lives and saving livelihoods. And that includes helping our hardest hit neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. Over the last few months, our city's housing authority and Caltrans have negotiated a master lease that will allow us to lease from the state up to 22 vacant homes as transitional housing for unhoused families in El Sereno. These were homes that were bought by Caltrans for the planned then extension of the 710 freeway that won't be happening. Over the weekend, the first families moved into these homes. They'll have access to caseworkers who will help them find permanent housing. We'll manage their needs from childcare to substance abuse counseling, from any of the things that they need to make sure their lives can get back on track. And this program will eventually provide opportunities for dozens of unhoused families in the area. And this is only the beginning. Together with the hundreds of new units we're buying with Project Home Key, with the state help and local dollars, we're moving hundreds more people off the streets in coming weeks and months than we saw even before with the accelerated pace during COVID-19. This moment demands that we bring every ounce of energy and creativity, courage to bring change. And it requires that we don't respond just to the urgent needs of our times, but reimagine what it means for our city to be safe and just and equitable. Los Angeles is doing that in one of the most historic moves we have ever made. And just as we've done with COVID-19, it's an example of the city and the county working together, not letting bureaucracy stand in the way of safer communities and better outcomes for our people. So this week, with county leaders, as well as our fire and police department, members of our city council, I announced our alternative therapeutic van pilot program. It's a fancy title. I'll break it down for you. Simply put, this is a 24/7 mental health response for 911 calls that today fall on the shoulders of either our firefighters or police officers. While they do heroic work, and I thank them for that, we have some of the best trained mental health units in our police department. We have firefighters who every single day act as social workers. We often have to call the police or the fire department at 2 a.m. because there's nobody else to call. The police, advocates for change, mental health advocates, and folks who are living with mental health crises need a better model. And we have become the largest city in America to go live with a 24/7 response. In my neighborhood, I hear a guy yell at 2, 3, 4 a.m. almost every night. And a police response doesn't get you anything more than him saying, okay, I'm hearing voices in my head. They calm him down, they move on, and again, the next day, he's yelling. We can do better with people with lived experience and clinicians, people who can provide prescriptions and get counseling and help. This is also a way that we can make sure that we can de-escalate situations and see them not just as a public safety concern, but really a mental health crisis that we see all over our streets. I'm so proud of the county. We've stepped up to offer city resources to pay for the drivers, and I want to thank the Department of Mental Health in our county for leading the way with this city council, and our community advocates to say, when we hit the streets this summer, to ask for a different and a better way, we're taking those steps necessary to make words actually result in actions. It won't cover every 911 call right away, but it's a brave start, and it covers the entire city. When folks need assistance beyond what can be supplied by the personnel in the vans, we'll also be able to transport them to an emergency room, to a mental health clinic, and not just an emergency room. They'll be connected to resources, counseled by on-scene staff, or taken to an urgent care facility for mental health. My friends, there is so much going on all around of us. It is difficult to contain both the pain and also the celebration at once. We celebrated last night an amazing moment for Los Angeles, but we still have tough days ahead. Southern California and across the United States, we've not had a year like this. Many are celebrating and reveling in the joy of long-awaited championships well earned. Some are fleeing, leaving their homes to escape fires here in the Southland, and we had LAFD firefighters that have been on the line for our brothers and sisters in Orange County. Others are mourning, remembered loved ones that you couldn't hold before they departed. And at the same moment, some in our city are feeling hopeful about the election season, while others are feeling anxious about what may lie ahead. This is a big, big week for our nation and for our city. But please, stay hopeful, stay involved, get out and vote. Get your ballot in tonight or tomorrow. Put it in the mail right now, or go to an early voting center, or show up on election day. Make sure you stay involved in helping a neighbor, knocking on that door. Don't get exhausted. Keep wearing those masks. Keep washing those hands. Keep keeping that distance. Make sure that we look back in 2020 and say, not just did the Lakers and the Dodgers rise up and win, but Los Angeles did too. That we protected each other and we wrote the strongest chapter in the city's history. Let's vote. Let's participate. And as always, stay safe and stay healthy. And please, stay at home whenever you can. I'm wishing you a lot of great joy in our Dodger celebration and strength and love from my household to yours. Thank you. And with that, I'll take questions and then I'll speak in Spanish as I always do. Thank you. First question.
Thank you. We'll go to the line of Claudia Prosciutto. Please go ahead.
Hi, Claudia.
Hi, I have a couple of questions,
Sure.
and I'm just going to ask them all consecutively because I can never hear when you're talking to me on the phone. So
Okay.
There's a delay on the stream.
Go for it.
So one, I'm wondering if the city is planning to take any sort of last-minute action on Exide, given that the company, will possibly be walking away from the site as early as Saturday, and many of the affected residents do live in Los Angeles. My second question is regarding Rick Jacobs, whether it was his decision to go on leave or if you asked him to do so, and if it was your decision, why now and not earlier? My third question, given the growing deficit, I'm wondering, do you still think it was a good idea to put off cost-cutting measures such as furloughs? And, if Biden doesn't win and LA doesn't get more federal assistance, how are you going to handle that? Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, with Exide, we have been involved. We don't have the sorts of resources nor budget, to your last question, to take care of the comprehensive cleanup, nor should we. This is Exide's responsibility, and it's appalling that we would see federal, I'm not going to get political because I'm at City Hall, but that we would have an administration right now that would somehow let them get out from under their responsibility, that has caused cancer, that has showed children growing up with lead poisoning in their backyards. That is just anti-American. It is appalling. But we have, with our Bureau of Sanitation, been involved in some of those cleanups, and we will look and stretch to find every ounce of state funding and any local dollars that we have to help with those cleanups. That has to continue. The people of Boyle Heights and the surrounding communities, it's where my family is from, they deserve that. And just because it's a predominantly Latino community, a more working class community, they deserve to have the environmental protections. And I will continue to be a very loud voice. I thank the state for stepping up with the tens of millions of dollars that have been obtained. The state may have to fill that void, and we will advocate for that, and we'll look for partnering in any way possible. With Rick, it was a mutual decision, but I did ask him to, right now, have us be separated from that. I think that has to happen. It can be a friend or somebody you don't know, and in these situations, the highest standard is to make sure, and it was because of new information. That is the reason why. In terms of the third one with the deficit, it's very important for us to prepare. I don't at all regret we have actually got concessions to be able to pay for the furloughs that are not being taken until the end of the year. But I've been very clear those furloughs will begin in January. We're preparing, if necessary, for layoffs, reductions of our services. This is the worst year, I think everybody understands this, in households, for businesses, and in turn for government. And I have a responsibility as CEO of this city to make sure our city's credit rating, our budgets are balanced, as much of our city services are protected, and that we keep as many jobs as possible here for those folks who depend on a city paycheck. I was optimistic about this week, but obviously the Senate is gone. And we'll continue to push, whether it is in a continuing Republican administration or a new Democratic administration, for the next round of funding. I do believe that cities, red and blue, and by the way, I don't even see cities as quote-unquote red and blue like some leaders do. They are filled with people of all sorts of political backgrounds who deserve representation in Washington, for the nurses who are on the front lines, for the first responders who are doing things like the testing to keep us alive in COVID-19. That was something that both parties recognized early on in this. I hope both parties will recognize it shortly after the election, latest by late January if administration changes and that's necessary. But in the meantime, we will do what's necessary to make sure that we have money in the bank. If we don't, it would be even more catastrophic for the city. So we're working 24/7 on that. We feel like we are ahead of the curve on asking departments to step forward with those plans, and we'll continue to monitoring that. And one last thing, if we want fewer cuts, not only should we get aid from Washington, D.C., but our behavior, if we can continue to control this pandemic, means we can keep more of the economy going. More of the economy going means better revenues. More revenues means that we keep more people employed and more services for the people here in LA. So we really all have a stake in this together. Thank you, Claudia. Next questions.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the line of Ben Oreskes. Please go ahead.
Hello, Mayor. Thank you for doing this.
You bet.
Today, the City Council spent several hours kind of talking about a proposed ban on sleeping in a much larger part of the city than it had ever been before. That would be contingent on an offer of shelter. I'm curious, I know you've been very engaged on this issue, what you sort of made of the city attorney's proposed changes to ordinances. Would you support something as it's currently written? Nothing has changed. Would you veto it if it came to your desk?
So I don't know until they pass something, and I know there's been some back and forth and it's been put off until late November. I fundamentally believe, as I've stated before, in a right to housing. I think that people should have housing in this country. It's something I've worked on with candidates running for president. I'm optimistic that we could see a huge expansion of our housing programs, and that more than anything else we talk about with homelessness, and in countries that have eliminated homelessness, those policies really are the solution. Otherwise, you're trying to clean up a mess that continues to get worse and worse. Secondly, I do believe that not all public space can just be a place where all people can camp, but it's inhumane to tell people to move from here to there down the block, make those folks happy and those people unhappy without there being not just an offer of, but actual shelter and housing available. If those two principles are enshrined in a way that has the resources behind the housing, so that we essentially move much closer to a right to housing in a given neighborhood, area, or ideally in the city, and then we move forward with making sure folks who, Americans with Disabilities Act, others, that we keep clear and clean places, that the public right-of-way should be clear, then I'm open to that. But I'm going to look very carefully at what gets passed before I will say one way or the other, whether I would veto it, whether I will sign it. And I am confident that both of those twin pillars can guide good public policy coming out both from the recommendations of the city attorney and the city council. Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the line of Ron Lynn. Please go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, thank you for taking our questions.
You bet.
I have two questions for you
Sure.
on two different topics. The first is about the coronavirus. Why do you think LA has struggled with the coronavirus and stayed in the purple tier? Is there any hope of LA emerging out of the most restrictive purple tier, and what else needs to be done to turn this around? The second question is about the Hollywood Center project. This is the proposed development that seeks to bring skyscrapers on land on which, according to studies cited by state scientists, there's strong evidence of earthquake faults. So here's the question. Given the findings of the state scientists, do you still support this project being approved? And what assurances can you make that skyscrapers won't be built on top of active earthquake faults in LA? Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Well, we absolutely live in earthquake land. I think it's critical, and there's been studies that have shown both sides of this. But I'm going to be guided by not the politics of this or who wants this or who doesn't want it. I'm going to be guided by our city departments, both looking at the state evidence and the evidence of any other seismologists. I think that has to be, if we're going to be guided by science when it comes to COVID-19, we should be guided by science when it comes to land use as well. So I think we have to look at that, look at all the sources that come in. I know there's some who've contended that the state stuff isn't as accurate as others. The state absolutely denies that, says we're the most accurate. So I think we need to dig into both of those, and I'll look into that and find the recommendations that come out of our engineers who look at that evidence. And I'll expect them to make the most responsible decision, not one based on political pressure, not one based on aspirations, but based on the science of what we see. In terms of the first, you know, it's funny, when we hear that we're in purple all the time, we feel like the bad student in class. And I'll share with you folks next week a graph of both our per capita cases and per capita fatalities. And I think you look at Los Angeles, and it's an amazing story. We really have done well, and I want everybody listening to feel good about what they have done. And as the county put forward together, there's 3 different things that the state looks at. 2 different measures of positivity rates and 1 of the number of cases. Well, we're in 3 different colors, depending on which of those that you use. But the state says it's the worst of the 3 that determines where you are. So because our caseload adjusted is about 8 and it needs to be at 7 or below to go to the next tier, we stay in purple. But for the 2 positivity measures, we're actually red and orange, which is a reflection of how low our positivity rates are compared to where they've been, compared to most of the country, and compared to even other counties in California. So that's an ongoing discussion with the state. I certainly would be a proponent of any things where we can adjust that, as they've worked with us to do, looking at measures of equity. In other words, how well are we doing in poorer neighborhoods, communities of color, more vulnerable places, to address, as we did, the nursing home deaths, to address African American deaths. The way that we're looking at those vulnerable communities has helped us be on the verge of moving from purple to red. But I think that, looking at an average of those 3 may be better than looking at the worst one. But today, that's the system we have to live with. If we can get below from 8 to 7 in the coming couple weeks, they'll move us down to red. If we can continue that even further, we could get down to orange based on our positivity. And so part of that is we test a lot, so we get a lot of cases. Part of that is that we've had that robust system in place more than other counties, and I don't think we should be punished for that. I think that we should look at a fair way. I understand it, and I think that we need to go cautiously when we open up. And right now, given what we're seeing around the country, I think it's okay to hold where we are right now. Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you. We'll go to the line of Patrick Healy. Please go ahead.
Hey, Patrick.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm celebrating still. Yourself?
Yeah, well, that's one of my 2 questions.
Sure.
Light of the Dodgers on the heels of the Lakers, can you imagine some way to do some kind of distanced public recognition?
Absolutely, Patrick. I mean, look, I would love when the players can, and everybody's healthy, and everybody's rested, and everybody's spent time with their family. Because remember, these athletes sacrificed their time with their loved ones, put themselves in a bubble for weeks and months to be able to represent our city, to give us some joy in this, joyless year. So I think we should all respect their needs up front. But when there is a moment, like I said, we'll celebrate in an LA way, and it will be a safe way. We're not talking about a place where people will be congregating with each other without masks or even with masks too close. But even if they can show us a show, even if we can put them in an iconic place. And look, I want to respect both the teams. The Lakers have to start a season very soon, and they've been the model of responsibility as the NBA has been throughout. We need to do the same thing with the Dodgers. And I know there's been thoughts and plans the Dodgers presented to us, to the county. We'll continue to work with them, but we have a moment to just pause, wait a few weeks for the athletes to be able to make sure that they're healthy, make sure that they have spent time with their families, and then let's figure out a way to do it. This is LA. We can be creative. We can light up the town. We can figure a time. We all, step out and do something. We can make something mobile. But what I don't want to have is something that's unsafe. I don't want us to have people lining the streets where we're going to see a couple hours of celebration that puts us back weeks and months. And that should be the table stakes. That should be the starting way that we think about how we'll get this done. But I'm confident, guided by Dr. Ferrer, guided by the teams, we can and we will celebrate these amazing teams. Anything further on that, Patrick? Okay. All right. Next question, please.
Next, we'll go to the line of Robert Kovacic. Please go ahead.
Robert Kovacic, how are you?
For you.
Good. Good to hear your voice.
I want to follow up on what my colleague Patrick Healy was talking about, who's at home right now working remotely. So, hi, Patrick, from inside our NBC studios. With that said, when we're talking about celebrations and we're talking about players getting healthy, Justin Turner testing positive, MLB has him under investigation. They're saying that he chose to disregard the protocols and return to the celebration with his team. I'm wondering your thoughts about the Dodgers as we're watching them live on our air right now return home at LAX. Do you think that this team should all be under a quarantine? Should they all isolate at this point? your thoughts on what happened, and then I want to switch gears if we can, Mayor Garcetti, and let's talk about the election.
Yeah.
Have you voted? And I'm curious to know what you envision for next week. There are sheriff's deputies that tell me that starting Monday they're going to go on 12s to prepare for Election Day, what could happen at the polls, what could happen post-election. Do you foresee our law enforcement having to get ready, get involved, and stand by just in case there's any problems, understanding there's going to be a lot of people outside voting and a lot of people perhaps reacting?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Justin Turner is the heart and soul of the Los Angeles Dodgers. One of the greatest players who's ever played, who matched the record for most homers in this franchise history in the postseason. I mean, he is, and somebody who I dearly love, his family I know. He's just an incredible Angelino local boy who has brought us such joy. But his diagnosis is a reminder that anybody can get this, and anybody can pass this on too. So it's a reminder of how safe we all need to be with every action we take and everything that we do. And so I'll leave it to the county, but I think the county has said, Dr. Ferrer said publicly, that because there may have been exposure, that folks should isolate. That's whether you're a championship baseball player, whether you're the mayor, whether you're everyday citizen, no matter who you are. And I think that is the prudent thing to do. I isolated for a handful of days based on Vice when I was in Cleveland for the first trip during this pandemic when I went to the presidential debate and was around, happened to be the commander-in-chief and his family, but I happened to be around folks that were COVID positive. That's the responsible thing to do. So I hope everybody will do that. Justin deserves as much praise and as much joy and as much celebration as anybody, as his family does, as do all the Dodgers. But let's continue to really play it safe. That is the most important thing. And this is a reminder, this hits all of us. In terms of the election...
Returning to the field.
Sorry?
You don't have an issue with Justin coming back on the field and celebrating with his teammates?
Oh, I think the guidance is clear that if we are positive, we should stay away from people. We all have to be very safe. But second, with the elections, I'm glad you raised this. We are very prepared for the elections, but at the same time, I don't want to buy into a narrative that there's going to be chaos during our elections. You prepare for the worst, but we are hoping and expect generally the best. So we have here in Los Angeles, LAPD is ready. We have resources. We have good men and women who are ready to protect your right to vote, deal with any situations if anyone tries to take that away from you or cause any chaos in an individual place. But there's no intelligence of a widespread plot to do things. A lot of folks are saying, should we shut down our businesses? Should we do X, Y, and Z? We are here as always. I told you, the city government will never stop working for you in this pandemic. And this is a critically important election. Law enforcement isn't, and oftentimes by law, allowed to be right at an election site because that shouldn't be the image, that's not the sort of country we live in. But they are available to protect our rights when we need them, should anybody, through violence or any other means, try to take that away. So I'm very confident. I would encourage folks to just slip that ballot tomorrow into the mail. We all got it. That's the easiest way to vote. If for one reason or another you forgot to do that or really feel like you have to vote in person, be safe, keep a lookout, let us know if anything's happening, we'll be there for you. But again, I do not expect that to be anything widespread. There may be individual instances, we'll see some stuff around the country, but don't let any of that change the narrative of you, your right to vote, and don't be scared to vote. We need everybody's vote protected. Thanks, Robert. Next question, please.
Thank you. We'll go to the line of Tom Waite. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for taking my question. Two questions. First off, just a few minutes ago, some new recordings emerged from Jared Kushner speaking to Bob Woodward, saying that that it was up to the governors to take on the responsibility of testing for coronavirus, but then in the end, that President Trump would get the credit for reopening, even though it sounds like they sort of abdicated a lot of the responsibilities about how to close and how to test onto the governors, but then in sort of a PR situation, they wanted to then take ownership for opening the economy. My second question is just a follow-up to Claudia's question earlier on Rick Jacobs. The allegations are that you witnessed some of this inappropriate sexual misconduct and that you did nothing to stop it. I'm just wondering if you can respond to that allegation as well.
Easy on the second one. Categorically no. Absolutely and categorically no. On the first piece with Jared Kushner, I haven't heard about that, but I would say this. It's not just the governor's responsibility. It's not just the president's responsibility. And I certainly, as you've seen me do here in Los Angeles, don't believe it's not my responsibility. It's all of our responsibility. With the power that we have, with the resources we can get, to make sure that there's national strategies and implementation of testing, of tracing, of tracking, of PPE. I mean, I'm grateful for those moments in which we've had good coordination with our federal, state, county counterparts. I can point to that. Some of the tests that I mentioned, the rapid tests, thanks to interactions with our U.S. Surgeon General when he came out here, and I and Catherine Barger met with him. That led to a series of conversations. We got 20,000 of the Abbott tests. We're testing different ones, but the Abbott rapid tests, that's a great example of cooperation. FEMA saying that they will allow us to get reimbursed for putting folks experiencing homelessness into hotel and motel rooms with Project Room Key, has kept the rate of infection and positivity lower among people experiencing homelessness than those of us that are housed. Those are great things, and I will never not praise the federal government for when they step up. But on the other hand, it has been very difficult. The LA City got no direct funds for testing specifically. We haven't had national strategies. It was definitely a dog-eat-dog world out there, where one governor and another mayor and other people were fighting over the same things that national leadership should have provided. They've learned some of those lessons. I won't just sit here and bash anybody, because as we're seeing now with the rapid test, there's more of a plan to get those out there, 12.5 million of them coming to the state shortly. We're learning as a country, but the idea that somebody would get credit for opening and others for quote unquote having to do the testing, no, both of those things are our mutual responsibility, and I will never run away from that responsibility. I would hope no other level of government would either. Thanks, Tom. All right, I'm informed that's the last question. Thank you all. I'm going to speak in Spanish, as always, to our Spanish-speaking community. Thank you, as always. Stay strong, celebrate safely, and thank you to our Los Angeles Dodgers and to our Lakers for making this a bright month in a dark year. With that, muy buenas tardes, Los Ángeles. Anoche, nuestros Dodgers crearon nuevas memorias para nuestra ciudad y el mundo, con lograr un nuevo campeonato en la Serie Mundial, el primero en 32 años. Este equipo nos ha mostrado la determinación, el talento y la dedicación de Los Ángeles. Entre el campeonato de los Dodgers y el de los Lakers, somos una ciudad de ganadores este año, y les prometo que encontraremos una manera segura de celebrarlos. Igual que ellos, tenemos que ganar la lucha contra el mayor desafío en nuestro tiempo, la de COVID-19. Nuestra ciudad ha sido un líder en nuestra respuesta a COVID-19. En comparación con otras ciudades, Los Ángeles tiene un número más bajo de infecciones y hospitalizaciones. Seguimos este liderazgo con lanzar un programa piloto para evaluar el uso de pruebas de detección rápidas en bomberas y jóvenes esta semana. Un paso muy importante para avanzar nuestros esfuerzos en controlar la propagación del virus. Estas pruebas son baratas y rápidas y pueden ser un recurso importante en la reapertura de nuestra economía y nuestras escuelas también. Espero los resultados del estudio para poder avanzar en este esfuerzo. Sin embargo, seguimos con la realidad que el COVID-19 sigue presente y peligroso en nuestra ciudad. Recientemente, los números aquí en Los Ángeles, tanto como en el país, dicen que las infecciones están subiendo. Hoy, en nuestro condado, tuvimos 1,351 nuevas infecciones. En total, 303,369. Entre ellos, 647 están en la ciudad de Los Ángeles. Nuestra tasa de transmisión es 0.95, que es más baja que la de la semana pasada. En los hospitales del condado hay 962 camas disponibles y un inventario de 1,114 ventiladores. El condado también reportó 20 fallecidos. En total hemos perdido 7,040 de nuestros vecinos, miembros de nuestras familias angelinos. De estas, 3 está en la ciudad de Los Ángeles. Y a partir de hoy, los 6 indicadores que monitoreamos en Los Ángeles están subiendo también. Yo entiendo que hemos estado luchando contra este virus ya demasiado tiempo, pero les aseguro que este no es el momento de parar nuestros esfuerzos. Los expertos dicen que este aumento de casos se debe en gran parte a las reuniones, donde personas asintomáticas están propagando el virus sin saberlo. Así que, desafortunadamente, no podemos celebrar Halloween de la misma manera que normalmente lo hacemos. Lleve una mascarilla, mantenga su distancia y lávase las manos. Y por favor, vacúnese contra la gripe si ya no lo ha hecho. Y si piensa es posible que haya sido expuesto al virus, hágase la prueba inmediatamente. Esta semana nuestros sitios de prueba tienen la capacidad de hacerle la prueba a más de 21,300 personas cada día. Y hoy estoy compartiendo unos cambios en nuestros sitios de prueba. Empezando el viernes 30 de octubre y hasta el martes 3 de noviembre, el estadio de los Dodgers estará operando como un centro de votación. Los sitios de pruebas cercanos, Lincoln Park, Echo Park y Union Station, estarán abiertos para ofrecer pruebas en esta parte de la ciudad. Y a partir del 30 de octubre, todos los sitios estarán abiertos 2 horas más, operando entre las 8 hasta las 4. Y el estadio de los Dodgers estará operando de las 8 de la mañana hasta las 8 de la noche a partir del 9 de noviembre. Además, todos los sitios de prueba estarán priorizando pruebas para las personas trabajando en los sitios de votación hasta el día de las elecciones. Y seguimos desplegando equipos móviles de pruebas. Mañana estarán en Lankershim y Chandler Boulevard, en East Cesar Chavez y la calle Soto, y en el YMCA de Wilmington. Para más información, visita la página coronavirus.lacity.org/testing o llame a 311. Y si recibe una llamada del equipo de rastreo de contactos del condado, por favor conteste. Esto también puede salvar vidas. Esta noche estoy emocionado de anunciar un nuevo programa de la ciudad que también sirve para ayudar a nuestros residentes más afectados por la pandemia. A partir del próximo lunes, angelinos de bajos ingresos pueden solicitar el subsidio DWP Utility Cares, un cheque de $500 para ayudar a angelinos a pagar sus facturas de servicios públicos. Las solicitudes estarán abiertas hasta el 15 de noviembre y los fondos se enviarán por correo en diciembre. Gracias a los miembros del Consejo Municipal, la presidenta del Consejo Municipal, Nuri Martínez, y el Departamento de Electricidad y Agua por su ayuda en este programa. También seguimos nuestra lucha para acabar con la indigencia y ayudar a nuestros vecinos sin hogar. Logramos un contrato que nos permite arrendar viviendas vacías del Estado para familias sin hogar en El Sereno. Durante el fin de semana, las primeras familias se mudaron a estos hogares, donde tendrán acceso a servicios que los ayudarán a encontrar una vivienda permanente. Además, Los Ángeles está tomando un paso histórico hacia la reforma de la seguridad pública. Esta semana anuncié el programa piloto que enviará trabajadores de salud mental a algunas llamadas de emergencia al 911 para enfrentar situaciones no violentas con profesionales de salud mental. En este momento hay gente celebrando, huyendo, marchando y llorando. Y gente sintiendo esperanza ansiedad y miedo sobre lo que pueda traer el futuro. Pero les quiero asegurar que vamos a superar este momento. Esta ciudad está con ustedes, siempre, siempre, siempre. Somos una ciudad que garantiza la expresión libre y la paz para nuestros residentes. Entonces, por favor, cuídense el uno al otro y vayan a votar. Esta elección es crítica por el futuro de esta ciudad, este estado y nuestra nación. Quédense protegidos, quédense en buena salud y, si pueden, quédense en casa. Sigamos adelante juntos. Fuerza y amor, Los Ángeles. Vive los Dodgers.